Prepare to immerse yourself in a world where the line between good and evil blurs, and where the most shameful secrets become public knowledge. In this video, you will learn not only about chilling events, shocking revelations, and cruel methods, but also about facts that will make you wonder, did the person you trusted really deserve that trust? Without revealing all the details, one thing can be said. Criminal schemes, betrayal, and intrigue are intertwined here. Scandalous secrets and secret investigations that have been kept silent for decades come to light. Meghan Markle's image as a modern and philanthropic Duchess of Sussex is shaken by a series of persistent rumors, pointing to a much more calculated strategy of social climbing than the official story has told us. A night in Toronto in 2016, shrouded in mystery and with the possible involvement of members of the royal family, stands out as a pivotal moment in a story full of contradictions, omissions, and a network of influences that still seek to hide the truth. Was it an accident or a masterful act of manipulation? Much has been said about Meghan Markle's journey from her beginnings as an actress to her entry into the British royal family. Beyond the official version, a collection of rumors and speculation points to a carefully planned ambition, a strategy that, according to some, began long before her meeting with Prince Harry. One of the most frequently repeated elements in these speculations is the existence of a vision board, a common tool in the field of personal development and goal visualization, which allegedly contained a picture of Prince Harry. Although there is no photographic or documentary evidence to support this claim, its persistence in public discourse and dissemination by sources considered close to Meghan Markle, such as her ex-husband Trevor Engelson, give it significant weight in theories attempting to decipher the actress's motivations. The idea of a vision board with a picture of Prince Harry, circulated through a proxy and reportedly confirmed by Engelson, raises the question of how much Meghan Markle had a specific plan for her future even before entering the world of the royal family. It is important to clarify that the existence of a vision board in itself does not indicate manipulation or a calculated strategy of social climbing. However, in the context of other rumors and speculations surrounding her life, this detail is interpreted as a key element of a larger puzzle. This interpretation evokes Niccolo Machiavelli's work, The Prince, which analyzes the importance of public image and strategic manipulation for achieving power. Although the comparison with Meghan Markle is purely analogous and does not aim to judge her actions in terms of the 16th century work, the idea of a carefully constructed image and a long-term strategy resonates with Machiavellian concepts of virtue and fortune. It should be noted that information about the vision board comes mainly from rumors and unverified sources. It is crucial to maintain a critical perspective and not accept these accounts as irrefutable facts. The lack of verifiable evidence makes any definitive conclusions premature. However, the persistence of this rumor and its origin from sources considered close to Meghan Markle deserve analysis in the overall context of her journey. The absence of tangible evidence does not invalidate the story of the vision board, as the very nature of strategy and manipulation often lies in secrecy. As in many historical intrigues, evidence is sometimes found in the very absence of evidence, in the silence and manipulation of sources of information. The sensational approach of some media contributes to the amplification of speculation and subjective interpretation. The figure of Meghan Markle becomes a canvas onto which narratives are projected, fueling both admiration and criticism. The debate about her journey and her motivations, therefore, is not limited to verifying data, but extends beyond to a deeper analysis of the construction of public image, narrative management, and the role of the media in creating myths and realities. The search for objective truth in this matter becomes complex, as the available information is contaminated by speculation, bias, and the ambiguity inherent in unofficial sources. The history of human ambition is rich in examples of people who, through strategic planning, the creation of a carefully crafted image, and the smart use of social connections, have been able to achieve their goals. From Julius Caesar to the great tycoons of the 20th century, success in many cases has been inextricably linked to careful management of public perception. Although the analogy with major historical figures does not aim to make a value judgment about Meghan Markle's actions, it serves to contextualize the phenomenon of ambition and its complex connection with image and political or social strategy. In conclusion, although the existence of the vision board remains in the realm of rumor, Its persistence in the public narrative, along with alleged confirmation from sources close to Meghan Markle, adds intrigue to the complex story of her ascent. The analysis of this rumor, therefore, should go beyond simple verification or refutation, delving into a critical analysis of the construction of public image, narrative management, and how information, especially unverified information, shapes public perception of a media figure like Meghan Markle. The figure of Trevor Engelson, Meghan Markle's ex-husband, gains unexpected relevance in the narrative surrounding the actress's rise to the British royal family. Although his direct testimony is not fully publicly available, information leaked through the media and, according to some, confirmed by close sources, has added a layer of complexity to existing speculation. Confirmation, or at least the suggestion from Engelson, of the existence of a vision board that included a picture of Prince Harry has fueled theories of deliberate ambition and a carefully planned strategy on the part of Meghan Markle to achieve her goal. It is important to emphasize once again the lack of irrefutable evidence and the speculative nature of these claims. The alleged disclosure of information through a proxy, rather than directly by Engelson, has sparked intense debate. While some interpret this detail as evidence of careful planning of her entry into the royal family, others consider it a mere coincidence or media exaggeration. This divergence in interpretations illustrates the complexity of analyzing human motivations through fragmented information and rumors. Engelson himself, a successful television producer, has remained noticeably restrained on this matter, further fueling speculation. His silence in this sense can be interpreted in various ways, from a strategy of personal protection to a reluctance to fuel public controversy. The narrative that has been built around this event reinforces the image of Meghan Markle as a figure who has skillfully managed her public image, alternating vulnerability and strategy. This duality, present in many stories about her life, becomes particularly relevant when analyzing the speculation surrounding Engelson and his statement. Comparisons with historical figures who use strategy and manipulation to achieve power, as described by Machiavelli in his work, or with figures in popular culture who built their empires on the manipulation of perception, although inevitable, require a high degree of caution. It is not about equating Meghan Markle's path to the actions of controversial figures, but about analyzing the application of certain strategies of image building and narrative management in the specific context of her life. The published information presents a partially fragmented and subjective picture. The lack of direct statements from Engelson, the presence of intermediaries, and the prevalence of rumors require a critical and nuanced reading of the facts. It is crucial to distinguish between speculation, anecdotal evidence, and verifiable information. In this sense, the analyst's task is to examine the available information, determine its reliability, and adequately contextualize it to avoid hasty and biased interpretations. Meghan Markle's story lies at the intersection between reality and fiction, between verified information and rumors. And the interpretation of this ambiguity is crucial to understanding her journey. The impact of Engelson's alleged revelations, regardless of the veracity of each detail, is undeniable. They have revived the debate about Meghan Markle's ambitions and fueled a narrative that presents her as a calculated and strategically ambitious figure. These speculations, although lacking definitive confirmation, raise fundamental questions about control over the narrative, manipulation of public image, and the nature of ambition in the context of power relations. And it is this ambiguity that turns the story into an object of fascination and public debate. The absence of compelling evidence does not mean the absence of a strategy. Rather, it demonstrates the effectiveness of a well-executed strategy. Meghan Markle's public image, carefully constructed and maintained throughout her rise to the British royal family, presents her as a charitable, elegant figure committed to humanitarian causes. This image, projected through public appearances, speeches, and carefully orchestrated actions, coincides with the official version promoted by the monarchy and the media close to it. However, a series of rumors and speculations, disseminated mainly through unofficial sources and online forums, paint an alternative picture, suggesting a more complex and strategic personal life that contrasts markedly with the idealized public image. This discrepancy between public image and perceived reality has spawned intense debate. While some defend the authenticity of Meghan Markle's projected image, others consider it an artificial construct, a carefully crafted facade to achieve certain goals. The existence of sources confirming some aspects of this alternative narrative, although not definitively, reinforces the debate. Aspects of Meghan Markle's personal life, such as her behavior at some social gatherings, her relationships with friends and acquaintances, and her alleged information management strategies, have become the focus of speculation, fueling theories suggesting a strategy of controlling the public narrative and promoting her goals. It is crucial to remember that most of the information contradicting Meghan Markle's official image comes from unverified sources, rumors, and speculation. Therefore, it is crucial to maintain a critical approach and avoid any definitive judgments based solely on anecdotal evidence or speculation. However, the persistence of these rumors and the impossibility of completely refuting them fuel an alternative version and create an ambiguity that reinforces public fascination with the figure of Meghan Markle. Comparison with historical examples of characters who used public image manipulation to achieve their goals is inevitable. Niccolo Machiavelli's work, The Prince, offers a classic study of how appearance and image management can be strategic tools for achieving power. While there is no intention of equating Meghan Markle's path to the actions of controversial historical figures, the issue of double standards, strategic information management, and control over the narrative proves to be an intrinsically relevant aspect of the analysis of her rise. The apparent contradiction between Meghan Markle's public image and personal life forces us to reflect on the very concept of authenticity in the age of social media and media image construction. In a world oversaturated with information, where public perception is crucial, the ability to manage the narrative and control the image becomes a powerful tool. The apparent discrepancy between Meghan Markle's public image and the reality perceived through unofficial sources raises questions about the nature of truth, authenticity, and the social construction of reality, debates that resonate with philosophical discussions about the nature of knowledge and representation. Finally, it is important to emphasize that the discrepancy between a carefully constructed public image and speculation about a more complex reality does not invalidate or automatically confirm any aspect of Meghan Markle's life. The task of analysis lies in critically examining the available information, distinguishing between verifiable facts and rumors, and avoiding hasty judgments based solely on assumptions or prejudices. The persistence of this duality in the public perception of Meghan Markle underscores the complexity of the narrative and the need for critical and multifaceted analysis. The narrative surrounding Meghan Markle intensifies noticeably when it focuses on one specific night in Toronto in 2016. This night, shrouded in an aura of mystery and secrecy, is presented as a decisive moment in the actress's career. A moment that, according to various speculations, was full of tension, risks, and opportunities for scandal that could have completely changed the course of her life and her subsequent relationship with Prince Harry. The lack of tangible evidence, the absence of photographs or official reports, and the prevalence of rumors and second-hand accounts contribute to the nebulousness surrounding this event, fueling various interpretations and speculation. It is important to note that the available information about this night in Toronto comes mainly from unverified sources, anecdotal accounts, and speculation disseminated through online forums and sensationalist media. The absence of irrefutable evidence makes any categorical statement reckless. However, the persistence of these rumors and the insistence on their relevance by various commentators and analysts require careful examination, albeit in the realm of speculation. Analyzing these narratives is akin to reconstructing a puzzle from incomplete and potentially flawed fragments, where interpretation and deduction play a fundamental role. Various theories attempt to reconstruct the events of that night. Some versions suggest a social gathering with influential figures, a situation that became tense due to the unexpected presence of people or conversations that could have had negative consequences if they had become public. Other versions indicate a chance encounter that escalated into a more delicate context, where discretion and control over information were paramount to preventing a scandal. Regardless of the specific version, the tension, secrecy, and risk inherent in a situation that could have exposed Meghan Markle, and possibly others involved, are constant. The context of this night in Toronto is intertwined with the history of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's relationship. According to some accounts, this decisive night may have been a turning point in their relationship, a moment when Prince Harry witnessed Meghan Markle's social agility and strategic ability to handle delicate situations. The perception of this event changes dramatically depending on the source and bias of the narrator. For some, it was a brilliantly passed test, demonstrating Meghan Markle's control and cunning. For others, it was a dangerous situation, close to scandal, that could have ended her rise. The absence of concrete evidence of what happened in Toronto in 2016 does not diminish the importance of this event in the overall narrative. The very absence of public information, some argue, is part of the story, suggesting the intervention of powerful people to keep the truth from coming out. This silence in itself spawns new speculation and conspiracy theories, amplifying the intrigue and debate surrounding Meghan Markle's figure. The mystery surrounding that night in Toronto in 2016 echoes great historical mysteries, where the truth remains hidden in a fog of speculation and conflicting interpretations. The parallel is not perfect, but the nature of fragmented, elusive, and even manipulated information creates an inevitable resonance with the analysis of historical events of a similar nature. The study of the night in Toronto in 2016, therefore, becomes a study of the construction and deconstruction of narrative, the control of information, and the manipulation of perception. The lack of public evidence regarding the discussed night in Toronto in 2016 fuels a rich ground for speculation and conspiracy theories. The absence of photographs, police reports, or any official documentation shedding light on the events of that night has created an information vacuum that has quickly filled with rumors, conjecture, and speculative reconstructions. This lack of verifiable information has led some to believe that a cover-up was orchestrated to protect the image of Meghan Markle and possibly others involved. The idea of a cover-up, while lacking irrefutable proof, resonates with the history of major public scandals, where the suppression of information and manipulation of narrative have been used as tools to protect the image of powerful figures. The opacity surrounding that night in Toronto is reminiscent of other historical cases where secrecy and lack of transparency fueled suspicion of concealment, from cases of political corruption to high-profile scandals in the entertainment world. However, it is crucial to emphasize that the absence of evidence is not, in itself, evidence of a cover-up. The lack of official information about the night in Toronto in 2016 paradoxically contributes to the spread of unverified information. In the absence of objective and verifiable truth, speculation and rumors acquire relatively greater weight. This situation is reminiscent of what French philosopher Michel Foucault described in his analysis of power and knowledge, where the production of truth is inextricably linked to power relations. In this case, the lack of official information can be interpreted as a manifestation of power, where control over narrative and suppression of information contribute to the construction of a partial and biased reality. Theories pointing to a cover-up are not limited to the removal of information, but also include the manipulation of narrative and control over sources. The absence of tangible evidence is, in some cases, interpreted as proof of the effectiveness of this concealment. The lack of digital or physical traces, the absence of witnesses who dare to speak publicly, and the persistent reticence of allegedly involved parties fuel the idea of a carefully planned operation to protect Meghan Markle and possibly others involved from a potentially devastating scandal. Speculation about the possible involvement of influential people in the alleged cover-up adds another layer of mystery. The idea that figures with power and political or media connections may have intervened to silence the truth, or at least control how it is presented to the public, amplifies the intrigue. This type of hypothesis, although difficult to verify, resonates with historical cases where power has been used to control information and manipulate public perception. It is crucial, however, to maintain a critical perspective and avoid jumping to conclusions. While the lack of official information breeds speculation, it is crucial to distinguish between rumors, conjecture, and verifiable facts. The absence of evidence is not tantamount to proof of guilt and does not confirm the existence of a deliberate cover-up. However, the persistence of the mystery and the lack of official explanation contribute to a narrative that oscillates between intrigue, speculation, and the search for a possibly hidden truth. The night in Toronto in 2016 thus becomes a puzzle that continues to fuel debate about Meghan Markle's life, the management of public information, and the power of narrative. In the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle, Soho House in Toronto emerges as a key element in the alleged shaping of her social skills and ability to manage public perception. Although there is no direct evidence to support formal training in this location, speculation places Soho House as a decisive space in the development of skills that, according to some, allowed her to successfully navigate the complex social circles of Hollywood and later the British royal family. It is important to reiterate the speculative nature of these claims, based on hearsay and second-hand accounts, without documentary evidence to support them. The idea of Soho House as a kind of school of influence is based on the club's reputation as a meeting place for celebrities, executives, and influential figures. In this environment, Meghan Markle, according to some accounts, honed the art of strategic conversation, interpersonal management, and managing her own public image. It is assumed that in this environment she learned to identify and win over influential people, establish strategic connections, and skillfully manage information. These claims, although unverifiable, are based on the observation of Meghan Markle's behavioral patterns and her ability to navigate complex social environments. It is important to remember that descriptions of Meghan Markle's activities at Soho House come from circumstantial evidence and unverified sources. Therefore, these descriptions should be analyzed with caution, avoiding the temptation to accept them as concrete facts without solid evidence. The absence of verifiable information does not invalidate the narrative entirely, but imposes the need for strict contextualization. In this sense, an analysis of the alleged activities at Soho House in Toronto requires an approach that values historical context, sources of information, and the limitations inherent in the interpretation of rumors and speculation. The idea of training in a social space such as Soho House is not exceptional. Throughout history, exclusive social circles have served as spaces for the development of political, social, and networking skills. 17th-century literary salons, private clubs in Victorian London, and exclusive Hollywood clubs in the 20th century all represent examples of spaces where strategic social skills were developed and honed. However, the specific nature of any alleged training or learning by Meghan Markle at Soho House remains speculative. Instead of assuming that Soho House was a formal social or political training program, it would be more accurate to understand the club as a social environment that provided Meghan Markle with the opportunity to observe, interact with, and learn from highly influential people. Her behavior in this environment, according to accounts, demonstrated an innate ability to understand social dynamics, identify strategic opportunities, and develop beneficial relationships. This ability, whether innate or acquired, would become a key factor in her subsequent rise in the entertainment world, and finally in her entry into the British royal family. In conclusion, although it cannot be confirmed whether Soho House was deliberately used as a space for learning social skills, its role in the narrative of Meghan Markle's journey is significant. It serves as a metaphor for the process of learning, observation, and building social networks that contributed to her success. The evidence supporting this narrative is mostly anecdotal and indirect, requiring careful interpretation given the limitations of the information available. Therefore, the analysis of this aspect must be based on a contextual, critical analysis, free from final judgments without solid evidence. Prince Harry's attraction to Meghan Markle has been the subject of much speculation. Beyond the official version of a fairy tale romance, various theories attempt to explain the dynamics of this relationship, highlighting Meghan Markle's ability to combine charm and restraint, a combination that some believe proved irresistible to the prince. It is important to clarify that this section is based on rumors, speculation, and indirect observations, without documentary evidence to support the veracity of each detail. Meghan Markle's ability to balance openness and restraint is presented as a key factor in her appeal to Prince Harry. It is argued that her ability to move gracefully between different social environments, to show vulnerability without losing control, and to manage information skillfully created an image that was both attractive and mysterious. This ability to maintain a balance between controlled disclosure and strategic restraint is presented as a quality that captivated Prince Harry. It is assumed that her experience in Hollywood, where public image is fundamental, prepared her for this complex strategy. Some analysts have compared this ability to the political adroitness of historical figures who knew how to combine charisma and restraint to achieve their goals. The ability to establish a personal connection with people while maintaining a strategic distance is a skill that has been valued throughout history in fields as diverse as politics, business leadership, and, of course, the world of show business. However, it is crucial to avoid direct analogies and evaluative judgments without compelling evidence. The comparison serves solely to illustrate a behavioral pattern that, according to some theories, was crucial in the attraction between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle's alleged social adroitness in this context is presented not as simply a personal quality, but as a key element of a broader strategy. It is assumed that her ability to manage information, control the narrative surrounding her, and create a carefully constructed public image was fundamental in her relationship with Prince Harry. It is believed that this skill, honed in Hollywood circles and at exclusive clubs such as Soho House, prepared her for the complexities of royal life. It is important to reiterate that the description of Meghan Markle's social adroitness is largely a narrative construction based on indirect observations and speculation. The absence of documentary evidence to support these aspects makes any final conclusions premature. However, the analysis of Meghan Markle's alleged abilities and their influence on her relationship with Prince Harry allows us to explore the complex dynamics of attraction, power, and manipulation of public image in such a specific social and political context as the British royal family. Ultimately, the idea that Meghan Markle's ability to balance charm and restraint was a decisive factor in Prince Harry's attraction is a narrative that largely relies on speculation. However, the persistence of this theory and its influence on public perception of the relationship between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry make it a worthy element of analysis. This speculation invites reflection on the complex interactions between personal charm, public image, and power dynamics in such a closely scrutinized relationship that the couple maintained and continue to maintain. The mystery surrounding the night in Toronto in 2016 is heightened by the emergence of a rumor about the possible presence of Princess Eugenie. This speculation, circulated mainly through online forums and sensationalist media, adds a new layer of complexity to the narrative, linking the event to the British royal family in a direct, albeit unverified, way. The lack of tangible evidence requires careful handling of the information, clearly distinguishing between rumor, speculation, and verifiable information. The inclusion of Princess Eugenie's name in the accounts of that night significantly raises the stakes. The possible presence of a member of the royal family at an event shrouded in secrecy and with a high potential for scandal transforms the narrative from a personal story into one with institutional implications. This speculation could, according to some, explain the silence and the lack of official evidence of what happened that night. It is important to emphasize that there is no evidence to support the presence of Princess Eugenie in Toronto on that night in 2016. The available information is based on rumors, conjecture, and second-hand accounts, most of which are circulated through unofficial channels. It is therefore crucial to maintain a critical perspective and avoid uncritically accepting this information without verifiable evidence. The analysis should focus on the interpretation of these speculations in the overall context of the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle. The persistence of the rumor, despite the lack of evidence, indicates its importance in the narrative. The mere mention of a member of the royal family increases public interest and reinforces the idea of a conspiracy to conceal relevant information. This rumor can be interpreted as a manifestation of the public's desire to understand the complexities and possible conflicts of interest at the heart of the story. The alleged link between Princess Eugenie and the events of that night in Toronto has been used in some accounts to explain the subsequent alliance between Meghan Markle and the princess. It is assumed that the participation or even knowledge of Princess Eugenie of the events could have created a tacit bond or complicity between the two women, a bond based on shared knowledge of a potentially dangerous secret. This is a speculative interpretation, devoid of verifiable evidence, and should be treated with caution. In conclusion, the rumor of Princess Eugenie's presence in Toronto in 2016 adds a significant aspect to the narrative, linking the events to the British royal family. However, the lack of solid evidence means that this information should be regarded as speculation. Therefore, the analysis of this rumor should focus on understanding its impact on the construction of the public narrative and its role in creating and maintaining the mystery surrounding Meghan Markle and her rise into the royal family. The story in this respect reminds us of the difficulty of separating truth from fiction in the context of fragmented information and media speculation. The lack of official information about the night in Toronto in 2016, which is at the heart of speculation about Meghan Markle, fuels theories about a possible cover-up by Buckingham Palace. This lack of transparency, the absence of official statements, and the removal of any public traces of the event have heightened suspicions that the monarchical institution intervened to protect its image and the image of Meghan Markle. However, it is crucial to maintain a critical stance and acknowledge the lack of compelling evidence to support the existence of a deliberate cover-up. The speculation about a cover-up is based on the discrepancy between the secrecy surrounding the night in question and the public management of other scandals affecting the British royal family. Unlike previous incidents, which sparked extensive media coverage and public reaction, the night in Toronto remained shrouded in silence, fueling suspicions of deliberate intervention to control the narrative and prevent potential scandals. Comparing it to historical cases of concealment, such as certain political or business scandals where information is suppressed to avoid negative consequences, the absence of official information about this event could be seen as a strategy to protect the image of the monarchy. It is important to note that the idea of a cover-up by Buckingham Palace is a theory devoid of irrefutable evidence. It is based primarily on the lack of public information and the interpretation of this silence as a deliberate action. The absence of official statements does not necessarily mean that a cover-up exists, and may be explained by various reasons, such as protecting the privacy of those involved, or simply a lack of interest in disclosing information that is considered private. Comparing with historical cases where cover-ups took place, although serving to illustrate the possibility of such an action, does not provide direct evidence that it occurred in this particular case. The nature of the evidence in such cases is often complex, requiring careful analysis of various sources and contexts. In the case of Meghan Markle, the available information is fragmented, comes from unofficial sources, and is largely speculative. The lack of official information, however, cannot be ignored when analyzing the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle. The palace's silence, regardless of its causes, contributes to the ambiguity surrounding the event and reinforces existing speculation. This lack of transparency in a context of constant public scrutiny breeds suspicion and reinforces the narrative of a possible cover-up. The palace's decision not to directly address the rumors surrounding that night in Toronto contributes to perpetuating the mystery and allows various interpretations, some of them conspiratorial, to thrive in public discourse. Thus, the possibility of a cover-up by Buckingham Palace is a theory that should be assessed with caution, given the lack of direct evidence. However, the official silence and the absence of public information on this particular event, in contrast to the management of other royal scandals, contribute to the ambiguity and persistence of this hypothesis. Analyzing this situation requires careful consideration of sources, historical context, and the complexity inherent in interpreting fragmented and unverified information. Meghan Markle's wedding in Jamaica in 2011, a seemingly insignificant event in her biography, has become the subject of analysis and interpretation within the narrative surrounding her. A specific detail, the alleged preparation of a large number of joints for her guests, has been highlighted by some as an early example of her ability to control the social environment and manipulate perceptions. It is crucial to note that this information comes from rumors and anecdotal accounts devoid of verifiable evidence. The description of Meghan Markle preparing a large number of joints for her guests, although unconfirmed, is interpreted in some accounts as a demonstration of her social skills and her ability to create a certain atmosphere. It is suggested that this act was not simply an anecdote, but a manifestation of her ability to create an atmosphere of comfort and camaraderie, subtly controlling interactions and group dynamics. However, this interpretation is speculative and must be analyzed with caution. It is important to emphasize the lack of evidence supporting the veracity of this anecdotal story. The information comes from second-hand accounts, without verifiable sources confirming it. The lack of photographic evidence or direct testimonials from wedding guests means that the information should be treated with skepticism. However, the persistence of this rumor and its inclusion in the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle deserves analysis in the broader context of speculation about her personality and her social strategies. The interpretation of this incident as an early manifestation of social control is based on the idea that creating a specific environment and managing social interactions are important tools in achieving personal or professional goals. This idea finds support in sociological and psychological literature, where the importance of environmental control in influencing the behavior of others is studied. However, drawing definitive conclusions about Meghan Markle's personality or strategies based on a single anecdotal and unverified story is speculative and potentially inaccurate. It is crucial to avoid a reductionist reading of this event. The act of rolling joints for wedding guests can be interpreted in different ways, depending on the cultural context and the interpretative approach. It could have simply been a manifestation of generosity and hospitality, or a strategy to encourage a relaxed and informal atmosphere. Attributing profound strategic significance to this without compelling evidence would be an oversimplification. In conclusion, the anecdote about the wedding in Jamaica in 2011, although devoid of verifiable evidence, fits into the complex narrative surrounding Meghan Markle. The interpretation of this event as an early demonstration of her ability to control social environments and manipulate perceptions is a speculative hypothesis that should be considered in the broader context of theories about her personality and her social strategies. However, the lack of tangible evidence requires a nuanced interpretation and an awareness of the limitations of the available information. The perspective of Trevor Engelson, Meghan Markle's former husband, has become a crucial, albeit indirect, element in the construction of the narrative surrounding the actress. Although Engelson has remained noticeably silent in public about his relationship with Meghan, leaked information, interpretations of his silence, and the absence of direct denials of certain rumors have contributed to the proliferation of theories about Meghan Markle's personality and strategies. However, it is crucial to reiterate the absence of direct statements from Engelson confirming these interpretations. The importance of Engelson's alleged perspective lies in his privileged position as a witness to Meghan Markle's life during a crucial stage before her rise to fame and her relationship with Prince Harry. It is assumed, based on speculation, that Engelson was a direct observer of Meghan's personality and social dynamics, witnessing her apparent ability to create and manipulate her public image and successfully navigate complex Hollywood circles. Information attributed to Engelson, often indirectly and unverified, has fueled various interpretations of her personality and her strategies. Some accounts suggest that Engelson described Meghan as an individual with a marked duality, capable of projecting an impeccable public image while managing a more complex personal life. Other accounts focus on Meghan's alleged strategy of creating a carefully crafted image for social advancement. It is crucial to emphasize the absence of irrefutable evidence supporting these claims. Statements attributed to Engelson mainly come from secondary sources and have not been independently verified. The absence of direct statements from Engelson, therefore, leaves ample room for speculation and subjective interpretation. Engelson's silence, in essence, has become a crucial element of the narrative, interpreted by some as tacit confirmation and by others as a strategy to protect his personal life. The interpretation of Engelson's alleged perspective is also subject to bias. His personal experience with Meghan Markle and the context of their divorce inevitably influence his perception and any information that may have been leaked indirectly. Therefore, it is crucial to consider the possibility that these interpretations are biased due to personal circumstances and the power dynamics between the parties involved. The analysis of Engelson's alleged testimony must be accompanied by a critical assessment of sources, context, and the possible limitations of the available information. In conclusion, Trevor Engelson's perspective on Meghan Markle, as it has been reconstructed based on rumors and speculation, appears as an important element in the construction of the narrative surrounding the actress. However, the absence of direct statements from Engelson, the unverified nature of the sources, and the possibility of bias require a critical and nuanced assessment of any assertion. The analysis of this information should prioritize independent verification of facts and avoid hasty conclusions based solely on rumors and speculation. Discrepancies between Meghan Markle's early biographies and her current public profile have fueled speculation about possible image manipulation and the deliberate removal of details deemed problematic. A noticeable reduction in information in her official biography has been observed, with the deletion of details about her education, academic achievements, and certain aspects of her life prior to her relationship with Prince Harry. While it is possible that these changes are the result of routine updates or editorial decisions, the nature of these deletions and their timing have contributed to theories about more active control over the narrative. It is important to note the absence of official explanations from Meghan Markle or her representatives regarding the reasons for these changes in her biography. This lack of transparency has fueled speculation and led some to consider the possibility of a deliberate strategy to control the public narrative and prevent potential controversies. The removal of specific details, such as mentioning certain experiences or achievements, has been interpreted by some as an attempt to present a more simplified and controlled image, excluding information that could be questioned or cause debate. However, it is crucial to maintain a critical perspective and avoid hasty judgments. Updating a biography, especially in the context of such a prominent public figure as Meghan Markle, is a dynamic process that can be subject to various factors. It is possible that the deletion of certain data is the result of an editorial decision to simplify information, remove details deemed irrelevant, or even correct inaccuracies. A comparison with public image management strategies used by other public figures, both in the world of show business and in politics, is inevitable. There is often a tendency to simplify or modify public biographies to present a more consistent and favorable image. However, in the case of Meghan Markle, the nature of these deletions and their specific context have contributed to the proliferation of speculation about more strategic, potentially manipulative control over the narrative. The timing of these deletions is also relevant. Some analysts have noted that the reduction of information in her official biography occurs at times of heightened public attention or controversy. This temporal coincidence has reinforced the idea that the changes are not accidental but are part of a strategy to control the public image and counter possible attacks or criticism. However, without corroborating evidence, this remains speculation. In conclusion, the inconsistencies between Meghan Markle's early biographies and her current public profile, along with the deletion of certain details, have generated speculation about possible narrative control. While it is possible that these changes are related to editorial decisions or routine updates, the lack of transparency and the temporal coincidence with periods of heightened public attention have contributed to the persistence of these theories. Analyzing the situation should consider the absence of definitive evidence and the need for a critical assessment of the available information, avoiding hasty judgments based solely on speculation. Interviews given by Meghan Markle, upon careful analysis, reveal certain inconsistencies and contradictions that have fueled speculation about possible narrative control and strategic manipulation of information. One of the most discussed claims is Meghan's statement that she did not seek information about Prince Harry before meeting him. This statement contrasts with the depth of her knowledge of the royal family and Prince's life, demonstrated in subsequent interviews. It is crucial to reiterate that this analysis is based on comparing different public statements without the intention of accusing Meghan Markle of deliberate deception. This discrepancy between initial and subsequent statements has led some analysts to consider the possibility of a deliberate strategy to control the narrative. The initial claim of not knowing Prince Harry could have been a strategy to present herself as someone genuinely attracted to his personality beyond his royal status. The claim of prior ignorance could project an image of authenticity and spontaneity, contradicting a narrative of strategy and planning, more consistent with what some consider her ambitions. However, it is important to consider the complexity of human memory and the possibility of errors or inaccuracies in public statements. The context of the interviews, the pressure from the media, and the very development of the relationship between Meghan and Prince Harry could have influenced how Meghan told her story. Categorically attributing these inconsistencies to a strategy of narrative control would be an oversimplification. Comparison with examples of public figures who have manipulated their public image or personal narrative, whether intentionally or by mistake, is inevitable. In the age of social media and the culture of instant information, constructing a consistent and convincing public image is a complex task, subject to various pressures and opportunities for errors or biases in storytelling. It is crucial to reiterate the difficulty of establishing definitive conclusions about Meghan Markle's intentions based solely on contradictions in her statements. The interpretation of these contradictions largely depends on the analytical approach and the degree of credibility given to different sources of information. The absence of compelling evidence of deliberate manipulation of information requires a nuanced analysis, avoiding hasty judgments based on assumptions or speculation. In conclusion, contradictions in Meghan Markle's interviews have sparked debate about possible narrative control. However, the interpretation of these inconsistencies is complex and requires consideration of various factors, including the very nature of human memory, media pressure, and the evolution of the relationship between Meghan and Prince Harry. The analysis of these contradictions must be careful and nuanced, avoiding definitive conclusions without irrefutable evidence corroborating deliberate manipulation of information. The gradual disappearance of friends and acquaintances from Meghan Markle's life from the public narrative has fueled speculation about a possible deliberate strategy to control her image and eliminate potential threats to her official story. It has been observed that several people who were close to Meghan at different stages of her life, from childhood to her Hollywood career, have ceased to be present in the public narrative surrounding her. This absence, although not necessarily indicating a malicious action or deliberate removal, has contributed to theories suggesting more active control over the narrative on the part of Meghan or her team. It is crucial to emphasize the absence of compelling evidence supporting the existence of deliberate deletion of friendships. The absence of certain people in the public narrative may be due to various factors, including the natural development of personal relationships, the decision to maintain privacy, or even simply a lack of media interest in those friendships. However, the coincidence between this gradual disappearance and the growing fame of Meghan Markle has fueled speculation about a deliberate strategy to control the information disseminated about her life. Comparison with historical and modern examples of public figures who have carefully managed their image and narrative are inevitable. It is often observed that people in positions of power or with carefully cultivated public images tend to control the information disseminated about them. This strategy may involve distancing themselves from friends or relationships that could prove inconvenient or could be used to challenge their public image. It is important, however, to distinguish between strategic public image management and the deliberate removal of people. While the former is common practice in the world of show business and politics, the latter implies a more active and potentially manipulative action. Without compelling evidence to support the existence of a deliberate strategy to silence or remove old friends, it is prudent to avoid hasty conclusions. The lack of verifiable information about the nature of these past relationships and the reasons for their disappearance from the public narrative contributes to the ambiguity of the situation. The silence of these individuals, the lack of public statements, and the difficulty in accessing verified information amplify the uncertainty and fuel speculation. In conclusion, the gradual disappearance of friends and acquaintances from Meghan Markle's life from the public narrative has fueled theories about a possible deliberate removal to control her image. However, the absence of irrefutable evidence and the presence of various alternative explanations require critical and cautious analysis, avoiding definitive judgments based solely on speculation. The interpretation of this situation must take into account the complexity of human relationships, the natural evolution of friendships, and the image management strategies characteristic of the world of show business and politics. Meghan Markle's entry into the British royal family represented a clash of cultures, a collision between the dynamic fluidity and culture of reinvention of Hollywood and the rigid expectations of permanence and tradition of the British monarchy. This clash, although implicit, manifests itself in the various controversies and speculations that have surrounded Meghan since her arrival at the British court. However, it is important to recognize that this analysis is based on the observation of behavioral patterns and the interpretation of public events without access to the private information of the parties involved. In Hollywood, image construction is common practice. The ability to adapt to the changing demands of the industry, to reinvent oneself to adapt to different roles and projects, is an essential skill for success. Meghan Markle, with her experience in the entertainment industry, came to the monarchy with experience in managing her public image and ease of adapting to changing contexts. This ease, however, clashed with the tradition of the British monarchy, an institution that values permanence, stability, and adherence to an established set of norms and protocols. The British monarchy, in turn, is guided by a centuries-old tradition characterized by stability, prudence, and permanence. The institution seeks to project an image of continuity and reliability, adhering to an established set of norms and expectations. Meghan Markle's arrival with her Hollywood background and her image management tactics generated an inevitable tension between the culture of reinvention and the expectation of permanence. This tension has manifested itself in the various controversies that have surrounded Meghan since her entry into the royal family. Speculation about her management of her public image, her relationship with the press, and inconsistencies in her statements are interpreted by some analysts as a result of this cultural clash. The culture of reinvention inherent in Hollywood, which values flexibility and adaptability, contrasts with the rigid expectations of the monarchy, which prioritizes stability and adherence to tradition. However, it is important to consider that this interpretation of the cultural clash is a hypothesis based on indirect observations and interpretation of public events. We do not have access to the private information of the parties involved, or to the individual motivations that guide the actions of Meghan Markle or the royal family. The interpretation of this cultural clash, therefore, must be contextualized, nuanced, and aware of the limitations of the information available. Thus, Meghan Markle's entry into the British royal family represented a clash of two cultures with very different values and expectations. While Hollywood culture encourages reinvention and constant adaptation, the British monarchy values stability and tradition. This tension, manifested in various controversies and speculations, appears to be a fundamental factor for understanding the complexities of the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle. However, it is crucial to analyze this cultural clash from a critical perspective, aware of the lack of verifiable information and the limitations inherent in the interpretation of public events. Meghan Markle's story, from her rise in Hollywood to her entry into the British royal family, is characterized by a constant tension between a carefully constructed public image and the proliferation of rumors and speculation. This tension between fairy tale and shadows is what keeps the fascination and public debate around her figure alive. The ambiguity inherent in her narrative, the lack of verifiable information about some events, and the proliferation of conspiracy theories contribute to the creation of a mystery that persists despite the passage of time. The official narrative, promoted by Meghan Markle herself and the monarchical institution, presents an idealized image, highlighting her humanitarian work, her social commitment, and her role as a member of the royal family. However, this official narrative is constantly challenged by an undercurrent of rumors, speculation, and conspiracy theories that question the veracity of this image. The persistence of these whispers, spread through online forums, sensational media, and social networks, fuels active public debate and generates a large number of alternative interpretations. It is important to note that much of this unverified information lacks compelling evidence. The absence of irrefutable evidence, however, does not mean that these theories are irrelevant. The persistence of rumors and the lack of a clear and convincing response from Meghan Markle or the monarchical institution contribute to the ambiguity of the narrative and the creation of a mystery that continues to capture public attention. Analysis of this complex narrative requires a critical and nuanced approach. It is crucial to distinguish between verifiable facts, anecdotal evidence, and speculation. The analyst's task is to carefully examine the various sources of information, assess their reliability, and contextualize the various interpretations within the broader framework of media culture and the construction of public image in the digital age. Meghan Markle's story is in some ways reminiscent of the great historical narratives where truth is intertwined with rumor, legend, and speculation. The gaps in information, contradictions, and diverging interpretations contribute to the creation of a complex and multifaceted narrative where objective truth becomes elusive and ambiguity itself becomes a constitutive element of the story. In conclusion, the tension between Meghan Markle's public image and the numerous rumors and speculations surrounding her defines a legacy of whispers that persist around her figure. The ambiguity, the lack of verifiable information, and the proliferation of conspiracy theories contribute to the creation of a mystery that continues to attract public attention. Analyzing this narrative requires a critical and nuanced approach, aware of the complexity of constructing a public image in the age of social media and the difficulty of separating truth from fiction in a constant flow of information. Meghan Markle's story presents a complex interplay between a carefully constructed public image and a series of persistent rumors that question the official narrative. From the alleged vision board to the mysterious night in Toronto, ambiguity reigns, revealing the difficulty of discerning the truth in an age of fragmented information and public image manipulation. The tension between fairy tale and reality, between charm and calculation, persists, leaving the viewer with more questions than answers.